Okay, in the interest of time, we will start. This will be recorded for posterity. Welcome to the second in the series of the Study Tips Seminar. This is going to be a presentation that is based on organizing your studying time. And we've already covered how to take notes. If you see that, or you see this video and you want that video, it's also going to be found on my YouTube page, which is just Professor Droude. And you can also email me for the link. This is my email, travis.e.droude@occc.edu. So the first thing that we want to talk about before we talk about how to organize your time is how you are using your time. And so maybe the first question that you want to ask yourself is something along the lines of, if I'm in college and I want to succeed, do I have the time to succeed? So maybe the first question is, do I have enough time? And that question of do I have enough time is very subjective because everyone's is different. And I can't answer that for you, but I can give you a ballpark estimate or at least a game plan of how you can determine if you have enough time. So I think the first thing that you want to calculate for yourself is how many hours of the day do you spend doing what we would think of as sort of the unavoidable needs, the needs that you have to do in order to survive. So those are these following categories: sleep, there is eat, there is travel, there are errands you have to run, and then this last one is hygiene, right? Showering, brushing your teeth, everything that makes you presentable. So you might want to take some time to think about an average day for yourself and come up with some hours that you spend doing those things. What I'm going to give you is an estimate of what most people respond with. But remember that this is just an estimate and your mileage may vary, literally. So on average, people will respond somewhere in the ballpark of 7 hours of sleep. All of their eating time throughout the day will add up to about 2 hours. They'll do about an hour of travel a day. They will also run errands for about an hour a day. And all of the hygiene involved during that day adds up to, again, about an hour. And so you total all of this up and you get 12 hours per day. And the kind of depressing thing in some ways about that number, 12 hours per day, is that it's half the day. Half of your day is going to be spent doing things that you cannot avoid and you have to do. And so if you deviate from this in any way, and generally what I would suggest is more, right? If you're going to sleep for 8 hours, or you're going to eat a bigger meal or a meal that takes you longer to prepare, or you have to travel farther than an hour a day, you are looking at less than half of your 24 hours left to do everything else that is still left to do. Now, what are those other things that you still have to do? Well, I guess since we're talking about time management in college, we can say that you probably have some amount of school that you have to go to. And in a four-year institution where it's really important for people who have FAFSA funds, generally the golden number for that is 12 what we call credit hours. Or 12 credits. And schools will call that full-time. Now, it's kind of crazy because 11, which is not considered full-time, could be really, really time-consuming. And so just the fact that 12 credit hours is the golden standard doesn't mean that that's when you become busy. But we'll say 12 is just a good example in this case. So 12 hours of study of class time. When you look at the data that lots of people have looked into when it comes to how much time outside of the classroom do you have to spend per credit hour, it generally comes to an answer around 2 hours outside of the classroom per credit hour. So if we do just a quick 12 times 2, that adds up to 24 hours of studying time. Remember, this is going to be for the entirety of that week that you go to classes, considering you go to all of the classes during the week. So we've got 12 hours per day. And if we just go ahead and convert that to per week, you got 12 times 7, which is 84 hours per week. You've got 12 credit hours per week. It's going to require 24 hours of studying outside of the classroom. And then you might work a job. Okay? A normal 9 to 5 job, what you consider full-time is, anybody know? 40 hours, yeah. 40 hours generally considered full-time. So let's imagine that we also have to pay the bills. So you got 40 hours of work per week. And you add that up, and you've got an additional total of 76 hours per week. And this is not all that uncommon. I'm sure the people that are watching this in this room right now, you probably take quite a bit of number of credits. You need to study for those credits, and you have to also work to pay your bills. And so this is not coming out of left field. This is probably very much hitting home for you. And you might not work 40 hours a week. You might work more than that. But let's just say that this is a good estimate. So we've got this extra piece of data to add to our total. So when we're looking at our unavoidable needs of 84 hours per week, and then our commitments of class and work of 76 hours per week, just those things alone give you 160 hours a week. Okay, where does this leave us? Well, in a week of 7 days, times 24 hours, the total amount of hours that you have in a week is only 168 hours. We've already committed 160 of those. Subtracting that leaves you 8 hours per week, right? So just over an hour a day of free time. What is not included in any of these calculations Family time, friends, extracurricular activities, going to the gym, walking your dog, watching TV, going on a date, all of the extra things that you'd want to do, if this is what you're committing already, you have to do all of that in 8 hours. Now, there's really nothing I can say to make this any different. I can't tell you, well, you could subtract from somewhere. It would be very unwise for me to say work less, that you just can't do that. You have to pay the bills. In some cases, my suggestion would be, can you take less credit hours? Some people can, some people can't because of financial aid. And so generally, when students are looking for extra time, where do they subtract it from? They subtract it from the studying time. And the study time affects your grade. Less study time affects your grade, probably negatively. And then that might affect your credit hours, and that might affect your financial aid, and that might affect your work, and it just seems like a hopeless cause. So my task today, our task today, is going to be, how do we work within this realm? Okay? Because you also can't just say, okay, well, I'll sleep less, because sleep is necessary for coding of the information that you're trying to learn and remembering it. And you can't just pull an all-nighter and take an exam. It's not going to work very well. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to figure out how we can work around this. So the first thing would be the next question to ask yourself. The first question was, do I have enough time? So again, figure out, do you have enough time? The second question that we want to ask ourselves is, do I know what is coming up? Or very simply, do I know what's coming? Do I know what's coming? Okay. If in your, let me just pull up document here. If in your analysis of your week, you look at usually what the instructor gives you, which is a schedule for the various classes, you might see that some weeks seem lighter than others. And the tendency that students have is to relax during those weeks. You don't have an exam coming up. Maybe you just took an exam last week and it's Monday of this week or Tuesday of this week, and it's a Tuesday, Thursday class or something like that. And you tend to relax. That's just human nature. You just went through a very stressful period. And so you might say, okay, well, now this week I've got more time to go hang out with my friends or to watch a movie that I wanted to watch or whatever. But the problem is that a lot of times when I ask students, so when's the next exam coming up? They go, I don't know. It's not this week. That's all I can really keep in my head right now. But let's say that it was February and you knew that the exam was coming up on the first week of March, March 2nd or whatever it was, March 3rd. And you didn't realize that February doesn't have a full 30 days. You might think that you have more time than you do. So one of the things that I'm going to give you today is just simply a manual calendar that shows 16 weeks and 7 days a week, because one of the very best things that you can do is to schedule your time. Have an actual schedule so that you know what to prepare for and when you can prepare for it. This will help you avoid last minute cramming. It will help you avoid forgetting about an exam or an assignment that's coming up. I mean, we've all seen or all had moments where you forgot that there was a homework assignment due at midnight of that night, and you're scrambling to get it done, and you just don't have enough time, and thus either you submit something that's not your best work, or you don't submit it at all. And again, that's going to hopefully be avoided by scheduling. And sometimes, honestly, I find that an actual physical piece of paper that I write things down on sticks in my head a little bit better than putting it in my phone or my computer, because my phone and my computer is a constant digital source of information, sending all kinds of notifications, and I might have lots of different things in my calendar at work or for my personal calendar on my phone that I might not even really register that a reminder has been sent to me. So if I keep one that is completely separate for work and it's more analog, that tends to help me in the long run. The next thing is that you can use specific tools to think about all of the tasks you have to do and align them on your to-do list. And one of the best tools that I know about is something called the Edison's I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's a graph essentially that you can plot your tasks on and determine the order at which you should do them. So the way that you do this is draw 4 quadrants, and then there will be 2 axes that we plot things against. At the bottom, you're going to have an axis that you're going to plot how urgent the goal or the task is. So this is urgency. How soon does it have to get done? And if it's very urgent, you will put it over here. High urgency on the left. And if it's not very urgent, you can push it off. You'll put it towards the right. Low urgency. So that's the first one. How soon or how urgent is this task? And on the y-axis, or the one that goes up and down, you're going to plot importance. How important is this task? And that will go from low importance to high importance. And what you get is now you have 4 different quadrants based on urgency and their importance that you can then decide where those tasks fall into. So in this top left quadrant, we are looking at things that are both high in importance and high in urgency. And what we call this is the do. Do. You might even say do now. Those are your most important and your most urgent tasks. You cannot put them off any longer. They are absolutely necessary to do right now. If they are highly urgent, but they're low in importance, so it needs to get done, but maybe it doesn't have to be done by you. And if it's not done by you, it can be done by somebody else. And even if they mess it up, there's not that big of a result in a bad result that will happen to you. And so what we tend to call this one is the delegation quadrant. And all that means is that if you can push it off and do it after or give it to somebody else. For example, if you go home and you need to walk your dog, that's very urgent. The dog has to go outside, but you probably don't have to do it. Maybe your friend or your parent or your spouse can do that, right? It could be taken on by somebody else. and it's hard to mess it up. And even if it gets messed up, it'll be okay. Now, what about in the top right? In the top right, we are looking at things that are highly important, but are not urgent. This is where you will schedule, the scheduling quadrant. You have to plan to do this. It's very important, but it's not coming up immediately. You've got an exam in 2 weeks. So you're going to start planning for when you prepare for it. Okay? That's that quadrant. Again, where we're talking about high importance, but it's not urgent. And then the last quadrant, the bottom right quadrant, is low in importance and low in urgency. And if something falls into that category, you can delete it. Delete. Now, there might not be very many things that you consider not very important and also not urgent, but if any of those things you think, yeah, I can probably put it there, then it's better served to just not do them so that you can spend your time doing one of the other 3 types of tasks. I think this is a really good tool, especially if you've got a lot on your plate and you haven't really quite thought about how to start divvying up your free time to do those things. It can start to give you an idea of when and how to do them. So the first thing again is to schedule. And the second thing is to plot all of those things that you're going to put on your schedule on this chart and start to figure out what is the order of your to-do list. That'll help you start managing your time effectively. But it doesn't really answer the question that most of you came in here today with, which is if I have a low amount of free time to study, and maybe my question is not how can I study, because I've seen the other lecture or I know how to study. How can I set goals that are achievable? There are lots of ways to do this, but one of the better ways, in my opinion, and also in terms of the data, are to set what are called SMART goals. SMART goals. SMART goals, SMART is an acronym. That acronym stands for specific. The goal has to be specific. It has to be measurable. It also has to be achievable. It has to be relevant. And it has to be timely. Essentially, what does that mean? Well, it's got to be specific, first of all. If I say I want to lose weight, okay, that's a little bit vague. It's a little bit general. What if I say I want to lose 20 pounds? That is specific. It's also then measurable because I can weigh myself each week and I can track and measure the change in my weight. It also has to be achievable. And by that same kind of idea, it should be timely, which means it has to have an end date. If I just say I want to lose 20 pounds, that is specific and measurable, and it's achievable, but it wouldn't be achievable if I said I want to lose 20 pounds by next Monday. I could potentially do it, but it would be very unhealthy and not a good idea. But if I said I want to lose 20 pounds by June 1st, that's a little bit more within the realm of possibility. So it now becomes both achievable and timely. And last, is it relevant? Well, that depends on your goal in general. It can be relevant to you, it might not be relevant to somebody else. So a lot of times, what you will see is that somebody is taking a class, let's just say it's biology. I'm a little bit biased. And a goal that I might ask that student to give me is something that you've all probably thought of. I want to study more for biology. That's the goal. What I would say is that that is kind of a weak goal. It's weak because it may be specific, but it's not exactly measurable. What does that mean to you? Because to do better or study more means different things for different people. If you're studying 0 hours, more just means one second, right? That's a very vague goal. It also doesn't have an end date. It doesn't have a timely manner to it. And so how could we edit a goal like that, a weaker goal, and make it a smart goal? You could do it something like this. I will study for biology by taking notes and reading the textbook for at least 3 hours per week. That is a more specific, it is a more measurable, it's achievable, it's a SMART goal. That gives you a way to move forward. Instead of just saying, I'm going to study more, you now know what you have to do to achieve that goal. And you also know when you need to get it done by. And you also know how you're going to get it done. Another thing that I see a lot of times is another goal. I want to get good grades. I want to get good grades. Again, that's a weak goal because a good grade is very vague. It's very vague. And also, a good grade might differ depending on the class. For example, I took Organic Chemistry 1 and Organic Chemistry 2 when I was in undergrad school. And a good grade for me was passing. That was it, passing. But a good grade for me in ecology, or a good grade for me in genetics, or a good grade in the things that I felt were more relevant to me and I liked more and were more specific for my career goals, a good grade was an A, or at least a high B, right? And so again, if we're going to work through this one to make that goal not a weak goal, but a SMART goal, what questions might you ask yourself? Instead of saying good grades, you might actually want to be more specific. You might want to say, well, in calculus, so now it's become specific, I want to achieve a grade of, you stick in what letter grade you think is important there. If it's a C, that's passing. That's great. If you want an A in that class, you stick an A in there. So now it becomes specific because I want to achieve a grade of, let's just say a B. I want to achieve a grade of B in calculus. Now you've made it specific. You've also made it measurable because you know that you need the B. Is it achievable? Now that comes down to time. Do I have the time to do it? That's what we've looked at already. Do I know, what my schedule looks like? Have I plotted all of my things on my schedule on this graph here? So is it achievable? Depends on your schedule. And is it relevant? Does achieving this goal of a B in calculus get you closer or set you off better for the rest of your future or the rest of your educational goals by achieving that specific grade? Or would a C do its job? It would get you through this prerequisite course, and then you could focus more in other courses that are more relevant to your study path. For example, if you are an arts major and you have to take a math class, or you're a STEM student and you have to take an arts class, you probably won't want to be putting in equal amount of time in the classes that are not relevant to your degree path. So again, is it relevant to you? And then, of course, when and how am I going to study? And when do I want to achieve this grade by? Do I want to make sure that I'm achieving this grade by the drop date? Maybe it's not even the end of the semester. Maybe it's, I want to make sure that I'm on path to achieve this specific grade before I can no longer withdraw from the course so it doesn't affect my GPA. That would still be timely. So again, I want to get a grade of B in calculus by the midterm, and I will do this by going to class, taking notes, going to my professor's office hours. There could be lots of measurable things that you're going in there to do so that you can know if your goals are actually SMART goals or not. I think if you start planning this way and using this idea to start planning for your classes, it will set you right on a path where you know if this is even achievable, if you have the time for it, and it'll also give you a good game plan for it. Now, the last thing that I have for you today is a flow chart. And again, if you are on Zoom or you're watching this YouTube video, just email me and I can send you PDFs of these documents. This is a flow chart that tells you basically specific, achievable, measurable, relevant, and timely things that you can do before class, during class, after class, and in a group setting. Before class, one example that it gives you is you might pre-read the chapter in the textbook to give yourself some background knowledge of what you're going to learn about that day. You might do the homework for that particular chapter. Then you would go to class. During class, you want to take notes. If you weren't here for the first seminar, one of the things that I suggested was that you take actual handwritten notes and not on a computer, because most of the data suggests that retention is better when you first handwrite notes and then go and type them up. During class, you also want to maybe ask questions. Maybe not in class if you're not comfortable speaking in front of the entire group, but before your instructor leaves that room, you might go up to them and ask a question that popped into your head during the lecture. And last, you want to make your notes outlined so that you can easily go back to particular topics or particular slides. So that if you need to go back to your notes to find something, it makes it easier to do that. Then after class, within 24 hours, if possible, certainly not any longer than 48 hours because you would be going to class again. So let's say that it's a Monday evening class. By Tuesday evening, this is what you want to do. Go back and look at the notes that you took that day and review them and edit them You might find that, wow, during that lecture, I was writing so quickly and the professor was talking so fast that I kind of scribbled this word here and I don't even know what it means anymore. So I better ask somebody, I better ask the professor, I better go to the textbook and figure that out. So you edit your notes. It also will give you maybe questions that you want to ask the professor before the start of his next lecture. You also want to expound your notes, expound on them or expand your notes. Go to the textbook, add in parts of the textbook that you think fit with the particular topic that you were taking notes on. Compare how the author of the textbook talked about a specific topic to how your professor talked about a specific topic. Is it in the book and it was also talked about in class? You might want to star that because that's probably pretty important. Is it in the book but maybe wasn't talked about by your professor? You might also want to star that and ask the professor, is this something that you want us to know for the exam? Because a lot of cases, the professor will not just read you the textbook. They will pick certain parts of those topics that they think are the most important, and those are the ones that they're going to test you on. So asking them would be a good way to clarify if you need to spend time studying it. And ask yourself questions about the notes that you took. Can you answer them? Maybe there are practice questions you can find online at the end of the chapter to see if you're already retaining this information and you're understanding it. And if not, go to Google, go to the textbook, find the answers to those questions, and certainly ask your professor. And you do this every single time you go to class. Go to class on the Monday, on the Tuesday, review it. Go to class on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, review it. And by the time you get to the exam, when it's time to study for this exam, you won't even feel like you really have to do that much studying because you've been reviewing, you've been studying that entire time. At that point, it might be good to meet with a group of your peers and create a study group. One of the best things for learning is teaching it. So you might find that there's a topic in the chapter that one of your study group members isn't quite understanding, but you do. And so you can teach it to them, or vice versa. Somebody might get a way in which they thought of a particular topic that you didn't quite think of, and you hear it from a third person, right? The instructor, the textbook, and now a third person. And this might help you understand that information a little bit more. You might go see a tutor. We have free tutoring here at the Biological Science Center, at the Learning Hub that used to be called the Math Lab, down in the Physical Science Center. There are lots of free tutors in this building. And then you might want to make an appointment with the professor again to see if you've got all that you need to have in order to prepare for the exam. Most professors are here because they want you to succeed and they like to feel special. So when you go see them at their office, they're going to be happy to see you and happy to help you. These are the reasons that they got into this profession. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. I'm going to hand you these sheets of paper so that you can use them. Again, if you want them, send me an email and I can give them to you. And I appreciate you all for coming out today. Thank you.